Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Sunday edition of Freedomlink Radio. I am Joe Joseph. Along with me is my good buddies, Tim Watts and Popeye from FederalJack.com and Down the Rabbit Hole. So tonight, the subject is conspiracy. It's probably something that everybody listening to the show loves so much. But my man Tim, who's done years of research into conspiracy, is going to take you down on a journey, if you will, of conspiracy history. And it's going to turn things on its head a little bit as far as what your understanding of some of these conspiracies are. And I'm glad to have Tim on the show, and Popeye too, because Popeye is a big-time
conspiracy nut.
Yeah.
Tinfoil hat.
Wow. I mean, I'm just.
I don't wear a tinfoil hat anymore, though. After seeing what's his name, Vermin Supreme, I'm going to start wearing a boot on my head. I think it's a new fashion statement.
Well, yeah. I like that, man. Anybody that doesn't know who Vermin Supreme is, please go and check him out. Definitely a step in the right direction for the Democratic Party. I really, truly.
He's better than any candidate they've had up for like the past 20-something years.
Absolutely. I want my pony. I will brush my teeth every day.
Like I said,
gingivitis.
He's been known to walk around with a huge toothbrush.
Well, Tim, the floor is yours, my friend. Take us
Joe.
on a conspiracy journey, if you will.
Well, it's going to be preaching to the choir to you guys, I know, and Popeye.
I'm a skeptic.
Well. Oh, okay. That's what we are tonight.
9/11 happened the exact way the commission said it did.
Yeah, hopefully before the night's over, you'll be thinking differently.
Well, here's a good question to start off with, Tim. What exactly is the term conspiracy theory? See, I think the biggest problem people have is the fact that they hear that term, and it's like hearing a very negative term. It's like hearing birther or truther, or it's one of those terms that's designed and used to try to get people to look at it in a very derogatory way. But I think if we break down both those words for the listeners, they'll probably look at things much differently.
Right, because in our backwards society, Tim, conspiracy is looked down upon. That word is a word that alienates people. Like you hear conspiracy, you think, oh, tinfoil hatter. No. But in reality, conspiracy is actually a good word.
Well, this is how Americans have all had the wool pulled over their eyes, and it's basically brainwashing. It's ingrained brainwashing. They've done this for years, and a conspiracy theory is probably one of the most intellectually deficient terms I can ever think of, because essentially we've got good and we've got evil in this world. I don't think that's in dispute. It's a solid fact. Since the days of Adam and Eve, we've had good and bad in this world. And a conspiracy is when we have two or more people that come together to act with criminal intent. Conspiracies happen every single day. We all know it. At least you should know it. And a key fact to understand is that the U.S. Justice Department is acutely aware of conspiracy because they prosecute it every single day. The U.S. Justice Department. Yeah, go ahead.
Tim, I want to bring to the audience's attention as you start going into this. Folks, just go and type in conspiracy theory into Google, and then look at the Wikipedia page for conspiracy theory, and look at all the conspiracy theories. It'll when you get to conspiracy theory on the Wikipedia page, click on the list. It'll give you an option. Look at the list. Unbelievable, Tim, the amount of conspiracies there are. And this looks only to be a fraction of what there really are, but I didn't know half of these.
Oh, sure. But again, the key thing I want people to understand is that the U.S. Justice Department, part of the government, they prosecute conspiracy every single day. So now, why is it then when criminals within our government, those that are committing crimes of state, how come when they're accused of perpetrating these crimes, they immediately get to cry out that it's nothing more than conspiracy theory. You can't have it both ways. First, they're prosecuting for it, and now, when they get their finger pointed at them, they say, oh, no, that's conspiracy theory, because that's their crutch. It's a tool that's used by government. You've all been brainwashed to look away when you hear the term conspiracy theory. It's just like in The Wizard of Oz when they say, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. Instead of looking away when you hear a charge of conspiracy theory, folks, you need to be taking a closer look. Anytime they say conspiracy theory, don't look away. Look closer. Conspiracy is real. It's a known fact of life, period. There's no denying it. Ask any prosecutor. Conspiracy is the integral component of crime. It's real. It's conspiracy fact. Let's just get that out of the way right now. Now, those that want to hide behind the charge of conspiracy theory, that's usually the government. You don't find too many normal criminals that cry conspiracy theory as part of their defense. This is usually something that's reserved for crimes of state. I think you guys would probably agree with that. But I noticed recently the Los Angeles Times did a hit piece on Americans that buy into conspiracy, because this is becoming a lot more prevalent here all of a sudden. But, in their piece, they didn't attack the evidence of any of the noted conspiracies. They just simply said they weren't true. Just one of those blanket statements, oh, no, that's not true.
They never do, dude. They never do at all, Tim. They never, ever, ever do. I did an hour-and-a-half long video ripping apart Fox News' two little 5-minute segments they did around 9/11, attacking 9/11 truth, and they had that douche from Popular Mechanics, James Meigs.
Oh, jeez.
Who used to be the editor at Entertainment Weekly. Guy's got no scientific background whatsoever, and they're going to bring him on like he's the arbiter.
And who's related to Michael Chertoff, the who happened to be the former head of Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah, but no, there's no conflict of interest there.
No, none at all.
He's absolutely the worst.
They fired all the guys that worked there for 25 years that had degrees in engineering,
Yep.
PhDs in engineering. These guys were there for 25 years, and right before they did the 9/11 hit piece, 3 months beforehand, they cleaned house. And they put all these entertainment people in there. Yeah, no, they're not trying to hide.
And then when he argues about conspiracy theory, he goes after the minutia, the little sundry items that nobody's really throwing up, as the main points of 9/11. He takes on the little stuff, and then, he thinks he's proving a point, by knocking some of these little things down. And he never goes after the meat of the actual subject. But, yeah, it's here's the way I look at it. You've got conspiracy theory, and now my new thing is coincidence theory. So if you don't want to believe in conspiracy theory, you know what you are? You're a coincidence theorist. That's what you are, because you now want to believe that everything happened.
History professors will tell you that, actually. That's actually a very good, that's a good point. Some history professors, good ones, will tell you that there's two lines of thought on history. Coincidence theory or conspiracy theory. You have to believe one or the other. Conspiracy theory says everything happens and it's connected, and coincidence theory is everything happens, it looks connected, but it's not. And that's what they force down people's throats. So that's actually a very astute observation.
Well, one thing that I would point out is evidence does not corroborate a coincidence, but evidence does indicate a conspiracy. And not everything can be a coincidence, but yes, indeed, we do have a lot of conspiracies, folks, because we've got a lot of unscrupulous people in our government. If you want to look back through history, you look at all the myriad different events that have happened. You've got Pearl Harbor, where Admiral Kimmel said the U.S. had broken the Japanese codes. They knew well in advance when the attack was going to happen. They even pulled their best ships out beforehand, so that they didn't lose those during World War II. You've got Vietnam, where you had...
Hold that thought, Tim. Let's go to break. When we come back, Tim is going to talk more about conspiracies. And by the time the show is over, you'll feel a lot better for owning that tinfoil hat. We'll be right back after these few messages. Don't go away. Welcome back, folks. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that old Popeye and I are embarking upon a new project, and that would be the Intel Hub News Brief podcasts that are going to be coming out, part of the intelhub.com. It'll also be on our YouTube channels and the Not For Sale to NWO channel, but we're going to be doing that 3 times a week in order to kind of gear it towards a little more current event, and have some guests on that. There's just so much to cover that, sometimes the show just isn't enough. And there's been a lot of clamoring about Oh, you and Popeye should do something together, man. So, all right, we're going to do it. So tune in to the Intel Hub podcast, the Intel Hub News Brief. You can go to the intelhub.com to tune in.
Our first one went kind of viral, Joe. So
I know. It's pretty cool.
Yes. And
it's the chemistry.
Yeah, they're only like 15, 20 minutes long. You only have to bear with us for 15 or 20 minutes. So.
That's it. So tonight, again, Tim Watts is explaining why things have been turned up on their head, upside down, if you will. What's sane is now insane, and what was insane is now sane. Ain't that right, Timmy?
And how Americans have had the wool pulled over their eyes for many years. Revisionist history, folks, is being taught in our schools, and these are the things that they don't tell you about. And we've been talking about proven conspiracies. We started with Pearl Harbor and Admiral Kimmel knowing about, the Japanese codes being broken and them pulling our best ships out before the attack, and the foreknowledge with Pearl Harbor. And then you move on to Vietnam. And the claim originally was that the North Vietnamese launched torpedoes at the destroyer Maddox in the Gulf of Tonkin. We all know about that, and that's what started that 10-year horrible war that we had in Vietnam. And then later on, you've got former Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara admitting that this attack never happened. Look at all the people that died for a lie. The money and the expenses, follow the money trail. Who profited there? The military war complex.
McNamara sang like a canary right before he passed away. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that he talked about when he came out. I mean, talk about having skeletons in the closet, huh?
There's a lot of people that suddenly develop a conscience, when they're on their deathbed. And I suppose, thank goodness for us. But, the next one you move on to after Vietnam is JFK, and there's another one where they said conspiracy theory for years, the Warren Commission said, no, it's a lone gunman. We all know better than that. And then finally, in 1976, you've got the House Select Committee on Assassinations who said, it was probably a conspiracy theory. Really? They had the same information that the Warren Commission had, How is it that they were able to figure it out, but the Warren Commission couldn't? And what's very interesting to note is that on the Warren Commission, you had guys like John McCloy, who was president of the World Bank. You also had Allen Dulles, director of the CIA. Two of the factions, guys that Kennedy threatened, when he was talking about breaking the CIA into a million pieces and casting it into the wind, and when he wanted to threaten the Federal Reserve with Executive Order 1110, 11110, yeah.
And both entities are private. The CIA is a private corporation,
sure.
And so is the Federal Reserve. Isn't that interesting?
And this explains, why the Warren Commission got away with what they did. I mean, talk about, a stacked deck. You put guys like this in there investigating, and these are the guys, that Kennedy was going after, for crying out loud, And then also the 1976 House Select Committee said that Martin Luther King, that was also probably a conspiracy. So for all of you tinfoil hats back in the 60s and 70s, hey, take some consolation that you weren't so...
Interesting tidbit about King. Did you know that they had a civil trial a couple of years ago, probably like 4 or 5 years ago now? And the trial, the jury found that there was enough evidence to prove that there was a conspiracy, including the FBI, Army intelligence, and the CIA to kill Martin Luther King Jr. Mm-hmm. And this was a civil trial. And Martin Luther King Jr.'s family, his wife, his kids, they were at James Earl Ray's funeral, and they went to him before he died and said, "We know you didn't do it. We know it was the government. We know you were framed. You're a patsy pretty much." And, he died knowing that they believed him. Now, this is the wife and children of Martin Luther King Jr.
Right.
And they say, they have a website. I forget what the title is. Just Google it. And all the information in the minutes and everything from the trial is up there. So a lot of people don't know about that. But, yes. So it's already been proven that there's more than enough evidence that the FBI, Army intelligence, and the CIA wanted to kill him. Because it was okay when he was getting black people voting rights and stuff and equal rights. But when he went above and beyond that and started saying we need to end the Vietnam War, if him and Bobby Kennedy, what a lot of people don't know is him and Bobby Kennedy had talked about partnering up and running for president and vice president. Bobby running for president and Martin Luther King Jr. running as his vice president. Do you know what kind of turmoil that would have caused back in the 60s?
Oh, man. I mean, that would be just about as bad as like Ron Paul and Michael Bednarik or Jesse Ventura or somebody like that. You know, it would turn America on its head.
Well, it would turn the powers of be on their head.
Well, yeah, in a good way, though. I mean, but in essence, it would change. It would force a change in the way people thought. You know, it would almost be like hit the delete button on their programming or put in that boot disk, if you will. time to slick the system and start over again. And that's the kind of change that we need here. But these conspiracies have been throughout our history. There's been a ton of conspiracy, and conspiracy is a good word. It's a good word.
Well, Caesar, there was a conspiracy against Caesar, right? It was more than one person. It was 2 or more people that got together and decided to stab the crap out of him, right?
Yep. I think it was, yeah.
Well, I guess it was a conspiracy.
And they've been going on for years and years and years. But, you know, again, you know, it's a brainwashing term. It's something that's been ingrained into people's brains to look the other way. Don't look behind the curtain, folks, because it's a conspiracy theory. And again, you know, that's when you need to take a closer look. Now, as far as Kennedy goes, you know, look at how many excuses they've proffered over the years, you know, that, it was the mafia, you know, it was like, it was Castro, it was those Cubans. And, you know, they've thrown out everything to muddy the water on that, just like they've done with 9/11. But, you know, you just follow the money on the story, you know. I mean, look at who Kennedy pissed off. You know, he didn't support the air support of the Cuban invasion. You know, he didn't support the Vietnam War. He wanted to break the CIA up. You know, he wanted to end the Federal Reserve or at least shake them up with his silver certificates. So, you know, there's a lot to say that.
Interesting about Kennedy?
What's that?
Did you know that he actually signed off? You know how Obama signed off days before on the quote-unquote kill of bin Laden, the kill order? Well, Kennedy actually signed off on the allowing the bombers to go in and do what they had to do, and before the land guys went in there because they knew it would be a slaughter if they didn't. Do you know who the final phone call had to be made from, and he just conveniently wasn't in his office?
No, I didn't hear that.
Now I can't remember his name. The Alan Dulles.
Oh, well, sure, there you go.
The same dick that was later fired by him because of the Bay of Pigs invasion. That's why he was fired, because he was supposed to be there to say, yeah, go ahead, and he wasn't in his office. Just like Rumsfeld wasn't in his office on 9/11, remember?
Yep. Yeah. And
you needed his permission to, quote-unquote, shoot down airplanes.
Yep. That was a very contentious relationship between Dulles and Kennedy. But, well, the whole thing about that is it's you've got to have big money involved to do what they did in Dallas that day, you know, and then you had to have the Texas boys involved, which, you know, LBJ, and one that I like to point to is John Connally. Do you guys ever remember John Connally's speech, what he said after the assassination? And Joe and I were talking about this the other night, and this always stuck with me when I was a kid, and at that time I figured it out, because he said, my God.
Hold on, Tim. Let's go to break, and when we come back, we'll talk about what Connally said. Don't go away, folks. 3 minutes. Hey, guys, don't forget to tune in. Jeez, I'm losing it. Tune in to the Information Nation following this show. That's right. Ken's got a new time, and that is at 9 o'clock Eastern, so tune in to the Information Nation. Now, I kind of strung you guys along a little bit, and conveniently, Tim's story kind of stopped with what Connally had to say after the JFK assassination. And it's very important because a lot of people don't know that John Connally had said this. But go ahead, Tim. What did John Connally say?
The big cliffhanger it was. This was Connally's quote, my God, they're going to kill us all. And you know what? He said it more than once, and you can probably still find this on YouTube. But again, he said, my God, they're going to kill us all. Now, if that doesn't resonate with some of you folks out there, this is what he did. He did two things. He made two distinctions. Number one, he said the word there, indicating that there's more than one person. And the other thing that he said is they're going to kill us all. Now, if you're driving along in a limousine, Popeye, Joe, and someone starts shooting at you guys, what the hell is going to come out of your mouth? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to duck and say, for crying out loud, somebody is shooting at us, or get down, But this guy, what's the first thing out of his mouth? My God, they're going to kill us all. And I thought that was very telling, from Connolly. And, now you've got that Texas cabal with Connolly and LBJ, which is... I don't know. To me, it's a very incriminating statement. But as far as the JFK assassination goes, again, then you've got the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald. And I know I talked about this with you, Popeye, when you did the JFK special back on the 22nd last year, when Oswald was capped by Jack Ruby. And that was totally a planned hit. And the thing about it is, if you look for the YouTube video, this one is also very telling, because Ruby shoots Oswald and the ambulance immediately shows up. It immediately pulls up. There's like no waiting. And the next thing you know, these guys, they get out, and rather than treat the guy who's got a gunshot wound to the stomach, they throw this carcass on the stretcher, and they're gone within 60 seconds. In 60 seconds, they didn't do anything to treat that guy. They just picked him up and they got him out of there.
They cut him open with no anesthesia, dude. The things they did to Oswald were cruel. It's really horrific, and of course he's the patsy. And
just another patsy.
I've caught hell for sticking up for him, but when you dig into how he really was, he was just used.
Sure.
And it's only right that the truth get out about him.
Isn't that the way, though, that it always happens, that the people that stick up for the truth, no matter what, it's kind of, I got into an argument about this the other day, is that the truth sometimes is not kind. And people are programmed now to want things that feel good or feel right, no matter what the truth really is. They're almost, if it feels right to them, then that's the truth to them, regardless of the fact that it's truth or not. They just believe what they want to believe. And it's very prevalent in today's, quote, truther movement.
Perception, Joe. It's like my DIs used to say.
Perception is 99%.
Exactly. Perception is 99% of everything.
But what happens is when you dive into a lot of these, quote, conspiracy theories, some truths come out and you're like, wow, man, that's just earth-shattering crap. And it's not exactly what I want to believe, but you almost actually have to work at it. You have to work at it to actually go and really look for the truth and accept the truth when you see it, So, I mean, I applaud each and every one of you out there that actually go and search, really dig hard for the truth. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, one thing I want to make clear to everybody out there, we're not just bashing the government. I don't do that. I hear a lot of people say, oh, it's the government, it's the government. That's impossible. First off, we have a lot of really, really good people in government, and the government is too huge and too vast for it to be the government, air quotes here now, guys. But what it is you've got rogue factions within our government. People, we have crooks that ascend to the arena of politics. I know that's probably hard for you guys to believe, but, and that's what it is. It is factions. So keep that in mind, folks, is when we talk about government conspiracies. It is not the entire government per se.
Oh, right.
It is factions, small groups
Very
of people.
Small, extremely
get into
small.
Key positions of power where they can actually influence the way things go.
Yes.
But back to some of the noted conspiracies, and then you move on from JFK. And I suppose maybe the next one I think about is Watergate. Now, if those guys hadn't have been caught, think about this, guys. If they hadn't have been caught, if they haven't got the plumbers there, they would have been saying that whole thing was a conspiracy. Oh, you guys are nuts. That's just a conspiracy. But, thank goodness they were caught. And now what's really interesting is you find out that this had something to do with the Kennedy assassination, that supposedly these guys were going in to retrieve incriminating evidence, for the JFK assassination. I find that somewhat interesting. So let's see. For some reason, I'm getting some strange audio here. Am I still with you guys?
Hey, you're still with me, man.
Okay, getting some strange audio here.
Hey, one thing that I want to...
Folks from the NSA listening in.
Yeah, one thing I want to add to this, because I like doing this just because of some of the backlash that I always get on YouTube or on even in the chat room, is when I go Bible on them. Oh, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. In the end days, the Bible says, people will want to hear. They're kind of like shutter their ears and they want to hear smooth things. They don't want to hear the truth. They want to hear what feels good. And that is exactly what we're seeing now. Look at the media and how it spins stuff just to make you feel good, you know? It's not about what the truth is. They spin it to make you feel good, to keep you numb. And that's where we're at now. That's why it's so important that people like Tim and Popeye that do this research, that you give them your undivided attention, because believe me, they know this stuff.
Well, and you know, here's another point. Don't just accept what we have to say. I try to encourage this to people. Yeah, exactly. Please look it up. Do your research. And don't just stop at the first Google hit you get to. Because I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but 10 years ago when we started doing investigations and stuff and 9/11 and stuff, it was pretty easy to get a Google hit and find stuff that you wanted right away. Now I've noticed in the last year or so, the hits that I used to get years ago aren't on page 1 anymore, and they're not at the top. Somehow these are getting buried like 15 pages back in my Google searches. I think, well, this is very interesting. So, you know, please wade through, folks, and, you know, and try to look at the information and look all this stuff up on your own. And, you know, don't take our word for it, but you will find that there is revisionist history at work here, and that the wool has been pulled over your eyes. But as far as some of the other conspiracies and things that have happened in our world, another one I want to touch on is the CIA drug operations. And this one's huge. Gary Webb wrote about this in the San Jose Mercury News years ago. And you guys know about Gary Webb. You know, he writes this huge expose on the CIA controlling drug operations in the U.S., and suddenly they find him dead. Oh, yeah, the convenient suicide. So, you know, and then take a look at the MENA drug cartel, you know, and that involved, you know, President Bush, H.W. Bush, and Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton at that time. And that's all part of the Iran-Contra scandal. You know, and then people wonder why Clinton didn't go after Bush when he took office, you know. So birds of a feather, I guess. But moving on, another one is the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. That one, I don't know if most people realize, but the FBI actually gave the terrorists the explosives. You know, supposedly they were supposed to give them, you know, fake explosives and then come in and collar the criminals and away they go. But no, they gave them the real bomb. They're the ones that actually set this thing up. And there's an FBI agent, Nancy Floyd. She actually admitted that her supervisors had indeed botched this whole thing. You know, you had Imad Salam, and you had Ramzi Youssef. Imad Salam, he was the FBI informant. They actually promised him $1 million to help set up terrorists and to get that whole operation going. You know, there have been a lot of articles to come out recently, and you can find these if you look for them, folks, about the FBI actually setting up more terrorist acts in this country in the name of supposedly preventing them. You know, the shoe bomber, and well, it's a long list.
Sure is. Last segment of hour number 1 coming up, folks. So don't go away. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Anybody wants to listen to one of them there good shows, you can tune in to Against the Wall with JJ Inc. He comes on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern, and Sundays from 3 to 5. Woohoo! Okay, there's my redneck commercial for the for the week, but it was not near as good as Chris Gio's commercial last night, Popeye. I just have to say. That was priceless.
That's what I thought that was for a second. I was like, oh my God.
No. I tried to emulate it, but it's just so tough. That was priceless.
I have to say that was pretty good. In a war of zingers going back and forth, that is, because now it's just a game between them. There's really no anger anymore. Now it's just like tit for tat, having fun. So that is kind of funny. But man, wow, the time it takes to put that stuff together is amazing.
Oh, it is, man. It's so much time. People have. It's like, how the heck do you guys do it, man? There's not enough time in the day. But hey, I guess when people are determined, they find a way, right? We're joined tonight. My good buddy Tim Watts is here. We're talking conspiracy. And history is full of it. And quite often, when people are labeled conspiracy theorists, typically there's reasons why they feel the need to question events. And I mean, we could go through, Tim's been going through a whole load of them. I mean, talk Federal Reserve, How about, Tim, you remember the Clinton body count conspiracy? It says, the Clinton body count, as it is popularly known, is a conspiracy theory that Bill Clinton, while he was president and before, was quietly assassinating his associates, ostensibly anyone who got in the way of his career, such as Vince Foster. It was started as a retaliation to the Bush body count, which ostensibly has various members of the Bush family responsible for events like the JFK assassination and the October surprise, killing lesser co-conspirators on the way. The Clinton body count is a list of about 50 to 60 associates of Clinton who have died under mysterious circumstances. The list being circulated over the internet started in the mid-90s. The list grew out of a 1993 list of about 24 names prepared by the pro-gun lobby, American Justice Federation, which was led by Linda Thompson. So, I mean, do you think there's any truth to that Clinton had a bunch of people knocked out? I know. I'll tell you what. I've read into the whole Vince Foster story, and it's hard not to think that. Are you guys still there? Or are you
just Google. I thought you were going to go on with that, but just Google the death of Vince Foster. There's an actual documentary that was put together about the shadiness of it and the Clinton Chronicles. I mean, you can believe whatever you want, and go on YouTube and look up the Clintons' dead friends, or just Google the Clintons' dead friends, and you'll see videos. The list is like over 100 people long. Did you know that conveniently some of the ATF agents that were killed in the Waco situation, ballistics showed that they were shot from above, as in you would have had to have been in a helicopter to shoot on that angle where they were shot from, using ballistics. And the two guys that were killed happened to be Clinton's former bodyguards. So kind of makes you wonder if they knew too much. Because a lot of his bodyguards go to die. So if you're ever a police officer and they're like, hey, we need you to be on Bill Clinton's or Hillary Clinton's protective detail, you might as well just write out your last will and testament.
You know what's interesting? I just thought of this, and there's a tremendous parallel here between the whole Branch Davidian thing, the Waco, and how a lot of those ATF agents kind of met their demise, like you say, from above. Isn't it interesting, too, that the Osama bin Laden death conspiracy, that all of that centers around Osama, and the Marines went to get, or the special forces went in there to get him. But what you don't hear a lot of is the fact that many of those special forces died in a helicopter crash like 2 weeks later.
Yeah, and from some lucky shot douchebag Taliban member with a freaking RPG.
With an RPG. Okay. Which is absolutely impossible.
Because you have the chance. Yeah, you have the chance of shooting a Chinook down with an RPG of a snowball's chance in a hell. But okay.
But not to mention that it's
unless the guy was hovering there, going, "Hey, shoot me."
It's very out of the ordinary. First of all, it's downright stupid to put 20-something people in a Chinook all in one. They never do that. They always split the forces up.
They don't put SEALs in a National Guard Chinook helicopter or anything.
No.
They have their own stuff. And you can ask even Ken Hildebrand. He was a gunner he was a side gunner on a Chinook in Nam. He'll tell you, I had him on my show, and we talked about this. I brought this up, and he was like, there's no way in hell, because those pilots know when they fly low, they got to fly fast to avoid small arms fire from the ground. It's just, common sense that these pilots that go and fly choppers in war, no, they when they do it in Iraq too. Why do you think they use the little birds? Because they can cruise fast, and then they put like a G minigun on one of the little side winglets. You know what I mean? That's why they use them.
That's what I'm saying.
Low and fast. You wouldn't. So I mean, a Chinook wouldn't be sitting there at like 100 feet or 200 feet off the ground near some precipice. The pilot's not going to be like lollygagging, like, come on, go ahead, try to fire that misguided piece of crap RPG at me, because RPGs don't have a guidance system. It's just a rocket.
They don't. It's not only they don't not only have a guidance system. I mean, it's like a rock with a bottle rocket attached to the back of it. I mean, that's how accurate it is.
And you would fire bottle rockets out of a glass bottle, and you would hold it and aim it. That's the aiming, except on a larger scale, and it can kill people. Much. You have to be pretty close for an RPG to be somewhat, effective aiming wise. And it's full of crap. The point of pointing this out is just to say that it's BS. So yeah, but you can ask Ken Hildebrand if you ever want to ask anybody, because he was a gunner in a Chinook. He was in the Marine Corps during Vietnam, and I couldn't think of a better person to ask than somebody that actually flew in a Chinook, and he said it's impossible.
Right, but therein lies the whole. This is why I say conspiracy is a good word, because do we really know what happened that day? No, we weren't there. And of course, the information is under lock and key and or has been destroyed and or has been killed. But it raises questions, and anybody that possesses even the minimum critical thinking skill, and that includes people that can join the police. Oh boy, that right there should tell you that, yeah, man, something's fishy, something's up. And then so you start digging. But this is healthy. When you start talking conspiracy theories, it's healthy. It's healthy to understand these things, to want to know and to seek the truth. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to always find it, but at least and you're on the right track. You're getting there. So, Tim, continue with your conspiracies, my man. Did Tim drop out? I think Tim dropped out.
No, he's here. I think he's just muted there. Yes, he's back with us.
Skype playing tricks on me again.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Well, anyway, what I was saying was conspiracy theory is, you're right, Joe, it's a legitimate term. People need to understand that. And when they cry conspiracy theory, don't look away, folks. That's the time to look closer, because that means they want to hide something. But Popeye, you brought up Clinton, and maybe Joe did as well, as about a lot of the different things that happened in that administration. But, if you look at the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, America's second worst terrorist attack, I guess if you want to count the first 1995 or the 93 World Trade Center bombing as number one, this would be number two. And the big key in that whole thing is General Benjamin Parton. This guy was a demolitions expert. You guys have heard his testimony before. He is adamant that fertilizer bomb and the Ryder truck used by Timothy Lee Harvey McVeigh, as I like to call him, it was not capable of any of that damage to the Murrah building. That little fertilizer bomb wouldn't have done what happened to that Murrah building. It wouldn't have blown out the entire face. It wouldn't have blown a 40-foot crater in the street out front. And General Parton, again, this guy's a renowned demolitions expert. He knows his stuff. And he's, again, adamant. There's just no way that this could happen. But the real key is when you start looking at what was involved in the Murrah building, there's a new Oklahoma City bombing film out right now. I'm trying to think of the name. A Noble Lie. And they've got a lot of very interesting stuff in there, folks. If you're interested, look it up on the internet. I think it's nobleye.com. Great video. But one of the things they point out is that many of the key documents being stored in the Whitewater, in the Murrah building, had to do with the Whitewater investigation. Coincidence again, I know, but and that's like with the World Trade Center. You had a lot of the interim
with Building 7.
Energy scandal and all that stuff that was so they choose their targets for a reason. These aren't just random episodes. There is
it
a
helps
method.
them cover up their crimes, Tim.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And
Speaking of crimes, it's a crime that hour number 1 has come to a close so quickly, but hour number 2 is coming up, folks. So sit tight. I got my man Popeye here. Again, by Tim Watts of the American Truth Network and newsfocus.org. Popeye from federaljack.com and Down the Rabbit Hole. And I've decided to add a subject matter expert on these topics and much, much more, the incredible Bob Tuskin.
No relation to the Incredible Hulk, by the way.
but close.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, this is a fascinating topic. And, the media, as much as we like to think that there's just this blatant conspiracy that all the heads of the newsrooms are in on, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They're just repeaters, most of them. They just go with the lie that's current and that they think is the lamestream.
'Tis true. Now, Tim, there are only like 6 people that own all the major news outlets. Isn't that right?
6 corporations, yeah. 6 corporations own the whole ball of wax, TV, radio, our publishing houses. And people don't realize that. That's how everything's controlled. You've got it all conglomerated under pretty much one umbrella. You got 6 CEOs that tell us what news is and what news isn't. They tell us what the truth is, their version. What's that?
Operation Mockingbird. That's what the CIA called it.
Operation Mockingbird, and that's one that we're going to get into here in a little bit. But there's one before that. Keep in mind, folks, as we talk about this, again, the 2 terms I want you to think about are conspiracy theory and coincidence theory. Is it a conspiracy or is it a coincidence? And think about the money involved in some of these things, because we've touched on Pearl Harbor, Vietnam, JFK, Watergate, the CIA drug operations, the first World Trade Center bombing, the Oklahoma City bombing. And all of these conspiracies have met an agenda somewhere along the line, every one of them. And now, after all of those, guys, we're proving 9/11. And this was America's 3rd terrorist attack. And one of the biggest ones that everybody points to, and God, I'm surprised this guy is still alive, and I pray for him all the time, and that's Norman Mineta, the Department of Transportation Secretary, and his testimony. Folks, if you want to see something, go to YouTube and do a search for Norman Mineta and his testimony to the 9/11 Commission, because his testimony is one of the things that really points a finger at Dick Cheney, because he talks about the young officer that comes into the PEOC, the Presidential Emergency Operating Center, and he talks about how the plane is 50 miles out, how the plane is 30 miles out, and when it got to the plane,
Tim, don't ask me again. Don't ask me. Just let it go.
Yeah. And when the plane gets to 10 miles out, he says, "Sir, do the orders still stand?" And Cheney whips his neck around and says, "Of course the orders still stand. Have I said anything to the contrary?" And now the plane wasn't shot down. Again, think about this, folks. The plane is 50 miles out. And some say that they were tracking that plane over 80 miles out. With 1960s ballistic missile technology, you could have knocked that thing out of the air easily. 80 miles out, 50 miles out.
Just think of like a Soviet SA-2 knocked down one of our spy planes over Russia, remember?
Yes.
I mean, that's 60s technology.
You guys are missing
they had
the fact that these guys had box cutters. Okay, Tim? Box cutters are very sophisticated. They're very tough to deal with.
That is
true. If you wield them right, you could be like a ninja.
Yeah.
I heard they were silenced box cutters, so now you have to take away guns because of the box cutters. And I heard it's all Bob Tuskin's fault as well.
But this is key testimony that's hard to get over, the Norman Mineta testimony. And there are so many people that have not heard this before. So please, folks, that's one thing. Go do a YouTube search for Norman Mineta and his 9/11 Commission testimony. You know what's interesting, guys? I don't know if you've ever gone to the archives, the federal archives, but they've got a lot of video attached to that site, and they've cut Norman Mineta's testimony out of there. They've got the whole proceeding up to that point, and they've got the proceeding after that point, but they conveniently cut Norman Mineta's testimony out of the federal archives.
I could play it for you right now if you'd like.
Archives?
Yeah. Go ahead and play it.
Federal Jack Archives.
Come on, you don't think I'd have this on the you don't think I'd have this saved? Hang on, let me load this up for you, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Norman Mineta testifying to Lee Hamilton in, I forget exactly what date it was. If the date comes up, I'll pop it in there. But this is at the 9/11 Commission hearings.
To focus just a moment on the Presidential Emergency Operating Center. You were there for a good part of the day. I think you were there with the Vice President. And we had that order given, I think it was by the President, that authorized the shooting down of commercial aircraft that were suspected to be controlled by terrorists. Were you there when that order was given?
No, I was not. I was made aware of it during the time that the airplane coming in to the Pentagon. There was a young man who would come in and say to the Vice President, the plane is 50 miles out. The plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the Vice President, do the orders still stand? And the Vice President turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary? Well, at the time, I didn't know what all that meant. And
the flight you're referring to is the
flight that came into the Pentagon.
Yeah.
He's lucky Dick didn't shoot him in the face.
I was not aware that discussion had already taken place. And but in listening to the conversation between the young man and the Vice President, then at the time I didn't really recognize the significance of that. And then later I heard of the fact that the airplanes had been scrambled from Langley to come up to D.C., but those planes were still about 10 minutes away. And so then at the time we heard about the airplane that went into Pennsylvania, then I thought, oh my God, did we shoot it down? And then
no, it just disappeared.
Wait, did I just hear Norman Mineta not only testify that Dick Cheney was in the bunker like 45 minutes earlier than he said, but did I just hear him testify that he himself, the Secretary of Transportation, thought that they shot down Flight 93, which I heard on the local radio reports in Jersey, because I grew up right outside New York City, and that's what they were saying, was that it was being trailed by 2 National Guard planes.
Out of the Dakotas, the Happy Hooligans.
Yeah, and they had fired on it, and they had taken Flight 93 down, and for whatever reason. And then later on in the afternoon is when the hero story came out about these Flight 93
and you know why they don't admit to that?
Whatever. Passengers. Sorry.
You know why they don't admit to that, Popeye? They don't admit that they shot it down. Everybody, you'd think, why wouldn't they admit, and be heroes that we shot down one of the possible attacking, the 4th attacking airplane? But they won't admit it because then people ask, well, why didn't you shoot down the plane that was attacking the Pentagon? You were able to shoot this one down. You didn't shoot that one down, and that one was 80 miles out, 50 miles out, 30 miles out.
They're surrounded by Patriot missile batteries and a whole assortment of stuff.
If you want to see the Pentagon, dude, go watch the movie Zero. Okay, it was put out by an Italian guy.
Yep.
This Italian dude. Go watch it. It's called Zero: An Investigation in 9/11. He gets into that, how there's 3 rings of air security around Washington, D.C., and in order for that plane to come in, that quote-unquote plane to come in and hit the Pentagon, it would have had all 3 of these separate security rings, separate agencies, not depending on one another, all separate agencies would have had to systematically fail at the same time. What are the freaking chances of that?
It is a conspiracy, but it's healthy.
Conspiracy.
And so is So is this word from our sponsors. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be back with the incredible Bob Tuskin, Popeye, Tim Watson, myself after these messages. There's so much to the 9/11 conspiracy, you know. There's so many things that we could go in, and the differences between the actual story and what people say happened, some of the research. There's so much to go over and comb through. But at the end of the day, no matter whose theory you subscribe to or what evidence you look at or anything like that, the fact remains that we could all gather around or team up together as one and say, look, something screwy's going on around here. And that's truly what it is. You don't need to know all the facts to know that something's bad. As a matter of fact, Tim, you said it last hour, that the Justice Department tries to convict. They try people on conspiracy.
Absolutely. And then when you point the finger at the government, they cry conspiracy theory, and then suddenly it doesn't work. Oh no, that's just tinfoil hat stuff. That's people of delusion. But
now you wanted to get into the media too, didn't you?
Yeah, but I wanted to on the 9/11 stuff again. And I've got a lot more on 9/11, but a couple other things about 9/11 aside from Norman Mineta.
Speaking of that, before you do that, why don't you tell people your website on 9/11? Because you have a website on it.
Oh, yes. That's called A September Coup, and that's at www.septembercoup.com. And been attacked 4 times, so there must be something there that irritates somebody. But, as far as 9/11 goes, there's a couple of other key individuals to look at that, like Norman Mineta. Well, one of them is still alive and one of them's not, and that's, Willie Rodriguez and Barry Jennings. And yes. Willie Rodriguez tells the story, of the bombs going off in the basement. And Willie was a hero because he was able to let people out. But then you've got Barry Jennings, the guy that died. And what was it about Barry Jennings that threatened them? Well, Barry Jennings is talking about going through World Trade Center Building 7. He's talking about going through it with Mr. Hess. I forget his first name, but these guys were both New York City employees. And they got trapped in there. But they talked about going up to the 23rd floor to the emergency command center, the mayor's emergency command bunker, where, Giuliani didn't go that day. But yet, nevertheless, they go up to the 23rd floor to the bunker, and they find half-eaten sandwiches and steaming cups of coffee, indicating that people had just been there, but then they left abruptly. And then the kicker is, he talks about stepping over dead bodies, all these dead bodies, as he's walking out of World Trade Center 7. Now, nothing had happened to World Trade Center 7. So you got to ask yourself, where did all these dead bodies come from? Who were these people, and why were they dead and lying in Building 7? And why were there half-eaten sandwiches and still steaming cups of coffee there? It was like that bunker had been used as an observatory. And I'm
you know
not
who
the
John
first one to
O'Neill
make that
was?
observation. Yes, absolutely.
He
was the
interesting
FBI
when they
agent that
found
got
him.
stationed there his first day. Yep.
They found him inside of a closet.
Yep.
Like he was inside of a closet, all slumped over.
That's
Suicided.
coincidence, though, Popeye. That's coincidence.
Yeah,
What happened to Barry Jennings, guys? How did he
wonder if
supposedly
John ran into somebody he shouldn't have, and they camped him at before the towers came down or whatnot. Sure. You never know.
Well,
the guy.
What about Barry Jennings, Popeye? How did Barry Jennings? How was he suicided? I can't find it.
They say
the
heart
thing
attack.
about Barry Jennings, they didn't tell you how he died, did they?
Well, I think, his family was very moot about it. I know Jack Blood had, what's his name, Dylan Avery on, and he's like about 6 or 8 months ago, and he had, maybe it was a year ago now, and Avery had said that he had hired a PI to look into it, and the PI, now I'm a former PI, so I could tell you this is really weird. The PI returned Avery's money and said, I've determined from looking into it, from what I've found, this is, and I'm paraphrasing here, this is like a matter for the police. You need to contact them. I'm returning your deposit. Now, as a PI, even if we found something that, they needed to go take the next step and go to the police, I would normally be like, well, thank you. This is the best I could do for you. Here's your answers, because they would pay me to get these results for them. So for the PI to hand the money back kind of shows that somebody said to the PI, here's the money for your troubles and then some. You refund his money and you tell him, sorry, you can't get into it, call the police or whatever, and end of story. And shut your mouth.
And you're missing the kicker there, Popeye. What did he say when he gave him the money back? He says, and don't contact me about this ever again.
Yeah, exactly. And don't ever contact me again. So there, right there that somebody said to him, you end this and you end this now. And they probably gave him 2 or 3 times the amount of money that Dylan paid, and end of story. So as a PI myself, I could say that's very odd that he paid him back, because you're paid to get the information. He got you the information. Now you have to take it one step further. And he wouldn't give him anything. He was very vague. So, and the family doesn't talk about it. So who knows? I've heard stories that he's in witness protection because of what he knows. I doubt that. I think they just killed him. And remember, they have chemicals that can mimic heart attacks. It's not that hard. So
absolutely, and strokes as well.
Matt Simmons dies in his hot tub mysteriously after he says there's a gaping hole in the Gulf of Mexico and they can't control it.
Oh, they killed him, dude. They totally
definitely.
Killed him. And remember, they have the heart attack gun where it's poison inside of an ice. They shoot you. It goes through you. They can't really see anything. If anything, there's like a little puncture wound, like a needle mark, and the dart itself melts away. And if he was in a hot tub, you think you're going to be able to tell what part of that hot tub the water was the ice dart? No, I doubt it. And they supposedly said he had a heart attack while he was in there, and that's why he drowned, quote unquote. Horse crap. Right after he was like, well, BP's lying. He goes on Bloomberg News. BP's lying. There's a huge rift in the Gulf. Like 3 days later, he's dead in a hot tub. Yeah, that's not suspicious at all. No.
Yeah. Well, the DC madam, she definitely killed herself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right,
there's another suspicious one. Yep.
Deborah Jean Palfrey.
Yeah. And we got Chavez now openly stating that he has weaponized cancer.
Very, very interesting, I must say.
Yeah.
That, and of course, when it happens so many times, when you see these things, these events happen, remember, history repeats itself, and this elitist cabal doesn't think you're smart and doesn't think that you pay attention to history, which, for the majority of Americans, they don't. But you do. And so those people that pay attention to history, that like to unplug themselves from the false reality, are seen as, oh, you're paying attention? Oh, no. You're crazy, man. Yeah. You are just bad shit crazy.
Joe, that's a term that... Oh, yeah, ran into a tree.
Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah. But you mentioned a term, Joe, that I absolutely loathe, and that's the elitist. I don't use that anymore, and because I don't consider them elite. Elite is to denote, somebody of,
Sure. I have a new nickname for them if you'd like to use it, Tim.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I call them the Illuma douchebags. Yeah, the Illuma douchebags.
Somehow I knew D-bags was part of that.
So, perfect, you can use that. It describes them perfectly. I really don't think they're above us either. I think they're actually on a rung below us. They're just trying to be tough.
I just say the Jews.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right. You're on that network, right?
Before we get to the break, there's one thing that I want to let people know about, and it's this is a new campaign that I've started on some of my websites, and that is, folks, you're not alone if you think that 9/11 was an inside job or that the Kennedy assassination, was more than what they've told us. You're not alone, especially on 9/11. If you take a look at the polls, and this is one I find significant, it's that 2006 CBS New York Times poll that found that 81% feel the Bush-Cheney administration was hiding the truth or lying about it. And the way you get those numbers is they had only 16% of that poll thought they were telling the truth. 53% thought they were hiding something, and 28% thought they were mostly lying. So essentially, you've got 81% of Americans that don't really buy the 9/11 story. So you're not alone, folks, if you think things like that about 9/11. Absolutely.
We'll be right back, folks, after these messages, where you won't be alone again. Stay tuned. There are many high-profile conspiracy theorists out there, and we've interviewed a lot of them Heck, just between myself, Popeye, and Bob, we've got like the industry cornered. But there's one person that you may not know is a conspiracy theorist, and that, my friends, is Casey Kasem.
And now a long-distance dedication to a boy who lost his dog. That's about as much as I'm doing, guys.
Let's go to the letters. Dear Casey, my dog ran away when I was 6. And whenever I hear a certain song on the radio, I cry and think of him. Well, Tina, here's your request and dedication.
I've got some priceless outtakes from Casey just losing it because the tech came out of a death dedication with an up-tempo record, and he just absolutely loses it.
O'Reilly style. Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll have to play those for you sometime.
Oh, dude, I want to hear this. You got to send them to me. I want to hear Casey.
Oh, it's awesome. He's dropping F-bombs everywhere and just screaming at the techs. And
can you do an angry Casey for us real quick without like the F-bombs, but like someone Casey?
No, we'll never get through all of this. Some other time. I promise.
I'd like
some
to
other
request
time.
a song, though, guys.
Well, it's like I said, we'll have all the time in the world, Tim, to talk about this, so you don't have to feel limited to one night.
Tim is Tim's Joe's new co-host here.
This will have to be continued on Tuesday night, folks. So there you go. Same bat time, same bat channel.
For what?
Oh, here we go. You know, man, plug in a little bit, will you, Bob? I bring you on for the second hour because, you know, you have some expertise here. You know, the least you can do is plug in a little bit. Sheesh.
Oh, man. I'd like to ask for a song by Payday Monsanto. I'd like to hear Sheeple of America, please.
There you go.
Is this not Casey Kasem? No.
Yeah, I think you know
we're past that bit.
We got to get back to 9/11. There's too much about 9/11. So, but hey, folks, take a look into 9/11 if you haven't looked into it already, because there's a lot out there. Matter of fact, there's too much out there. I think I've probably written 60,000 words on 9/11 already, and that's just touching the tip of the iceberg. But for people that deny 9/11 and that say it was not an inside job, those are people that haven't looked at the facts for themselves. Absolutely, because if you look at the facts, you're going to get your mind changed. I will admit that I went into this with a different slant than what I came out with. Now, granted, when I first saw those towers come down that morning, my son was getting ready for school. He came in, Dad, an airplane hit a big building in New York. And I came in and looked at his son. That's just an ordinary building. That's the World Trade Center. And that wasn't just a little plane that hit it. Look at that frickin' hole, And so I was glued to the tube all morning watching that. And when I saw the first tower fall, my wife and I both looked at each other and we said, that's a controlled demolition. You could tell by the speed. I mean, folks, if you've had even just elementary physics in school, you realize that 110 stories cannot drop that fast. So I went and I got my stopwatch immediately and I did the math, 110 stories collapsing in 9 to 10 seconds. And that was it for me. That was the start of my search. Once I started researching on my own, the epiphany hit me. Now, when I went into it, I originally thought, well, maybe this is like the 93 World Trade Center bombing and somebody, actually mined the building this time, and so I started my research and I wasn't probably more than 6 weeks in and I'm sitting in the same chair that I am now. And I sat back one day and that cold epiphany hit me like, my God, this was an inside job. And that's the only conclusion you can come to. I originally started out thinking this was terrorists that somehow had circumvented the security for the World Trade Center, and that's even a stretch to think about. But that's where I started. But where I ended up was not where I am now. It is where I am now, I should say. The facts are what they are, and they're voluminous, they're myriad, whatever you want to say. There is just an enormous amount of data out there, folks, if you just take a look. And again, the ones that say, oh, it's not an inside job, it's the official government story, they haven't looked. I know they haven't looked. When people say that to me, I think, okay, thank you very much. You haven't looked, because if they did, they'd know better. So, but anyway, one thing I want to touch on is the media, and is from being a former media person for 25 years, I take great umbrage with the media because of their silence on the whole 9/11 thing. And right now, the way I look at it is we need to account for them as accessories to the crime, because these people are bright enough to figure it out. These people are trained in journalistic investigations, and yet they don't lift a finger to actually look at the facts. If anything, they parrot the official story. They support the crazed Jim Meigs and the popular mechanics bullcrap. These guys know better. If we can figure it out, they can figure it out also. Now,
well, Tim, let me argue with you on one point here, that they are smart and that they should be able to figure it out. They may be smart, but there's a difference between our type of intelligence, perhaps, and theirs. They were good at jumping through hoops, doing what they're told, and being good little puppets. There's a difference there. So I would say they might be smart in some regards, but they're not open-minded. They don't have the skills of the trivium. They're lacking in so many regards that they just go through the motions because that's what's in their best interest, and at the end of the day, they're centrist.
Yeah, to an extent, I agree with you. I mean, some of them don't want to go the next step. But again, with a story of this magnitude and everything that 9/11 has meant to this country and the world, you would think at least a couple of them, one or two of them, might look into it and say, oh, wow, this is very disturbing. But they don't. And now I don't want to just...
there's examples
yeah,
of people
some of them have.
Media, though.
And the other thing is I want to make sure I don't just accuse these guys, because from being in the media, I realize that the media operates in a hierarchy, and it works from the top down, not the bottom up. And it's the people at the top that say, you know what, great story, Bob, but we can't go with that because, that's just a little too litigious. And, let's wait until Channel 7 and Channel 9 run with it, and then we'll go with it, And that's pretty much the way stories get buried. So there's a lot of frustrated journalists out there. But I want to mention to folks, there's two rules of journalism and broadcasting, and this was the very first day in my journalism class. They taught us this, and they ingrained this into our brain. The number one rule was always follow the truth, because the truth is the story. And number two was never become involved in entangling alliances that prevent you from following rule number one. And it was that simple. But yet now you look at our entire media system, and they all belong to the Council on Foreign Relations. And if you don't know about the Council on Foreign Relations, take a look at it. The CFR at best is a foreign policy think tank that tries to influence foreign affairs. Should they be involved with an organization like that? No, they shouldn't. At the very worst, they're an advocate and a proponent for the New World Order. Now, if you don't believe all the people that are involved in the Council on Foreign Relations, go to their website, folks, and take a look. Go to, I think it's the About tab, and take a look at the membership there. And what you'll find in our media is NBC's Brian Williams. You'll see CBS's Katie Couric, Diane Sawyer, Micah Brzezinski, Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, Bob Schieffer from CBS, Barbara Walters, Judy Woodruff, Paula Zahn, Leslie Stahl, George Stephanopoulos, Jim Lehrer, David Gergen, Fareed Zakaria from CNN. You got Terry Moran from ABC, Charlie Rose, there's one that really surprised me, from PBS, Rupert Murdoch, no surprise there, Bernard Kelb, Morton Kondrak, Monica Crowley. It goes on. And then you move to the print journalists, and you've got people like Katrina vanden Heuvel from The Nation, Peggy Noonan from the Wall Street Journal, David Schlesinger from Reuters, Judith Miller from the New York Times, Gene Lyons from Salon, Charles Krauthammer from the Washington Post, Mark
He's
Heaton,
such a Bilderberg scumbag, Krauthammer.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
David Remnick from the New
Drudge in there?
Yorker. Yeah. Jack Rose.
Matt Drudge is not CFR.
No.
Yeah, he is. He's Bilderberg, Matt
No,
Drudge.
he's not. No way.
Yeah, he's reptilian. He's also...
The point is, the list goes on. I mean, it's a huge list, and so stop and think about, why are these people involved in this organization? Again, at the best, a foreign policy think tank that tries to influence foreign affairs, and at the worst, it's an advocate and a proponent for the New World Order. Now, go back to rule number one of journalism is always follow the truth. The truth is a story. And then rule number two, never become involved in entangling alliances that prevent you from following rule number one. So why are all of these people openly breaking this sacred trust, this sacred rule of journalism? I don't get it.
They've been doing
and
it
this is why you get sold weapons of mass destruction in the Iraq war lie.
That's right. When we come back, it'll be the last segment of the show. So my crack expert panel will come back and talk about the media some more. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network.
And Krauthammer is not a Bilderberg. I have to rephrase that. He's a neocon piece of crap. No, he's just a hardcore neocon scumbag.
Reptilian.
Information to go over when it comes to this, especially like the secret society thing. It's so deep.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, oh man, everything's just so entrenched. It's awful.
Yeah, it is absolutely like the movie The Matrix, folks. And if you haven't seen that one, it's, you're living an alternative reality. And there's an old saying that we lived by. I think you guys touched on it early in the show, that we lived on in marketing, and that's perception is reality. And that's an absolute truism, because what you perceive is your reality. And folks, you're living in a false reality. Again, revisionist history has been taught to all of us. And until you step outside the mainstream media and what you've been taught in school and actually look on your own, then you'll become enlightened. There's a lot of literature out there that you can find on your own to learn these things. But back to the media, media control didn't just happen overnight. It actually started right after the coup of America, which I don't think we'll get to for this show, Joe, maybe Tuesday night. And that was when the Federal Reserve took over America in 1913. They had that cabal of 6 guys that met at Jekyll Island in 1910. The rich guys, the Warburgs, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Kuhn-Loeb bankers, the Rothschild emissaries, all of these people that planned for the Federal Reserve, and that's what took over our country in 1913, a rich cartel of bankers. Again, the Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express, as Dennis Kucinich likes to say. But before that time, J.P. Morgan, or actually after that time, I should say, right after that, J.P. Morgan in 1917, he hired 12 of the top news managers to help him determine the most influential newspapers in America. He wanted to see where other journalists were turning to get their news. And when he found out those top 25, he bought them out, or, he infiltrated them with his own people. And that's where media control actually started. Now, if you doubt this, it's documented by Congressman Oscar Callaway in the official U.S. record. It's volume 54, dated February 9th, 1917. And it's a proven fact. And that's where media control actually started. And then you graduate years later, and the CIA took it a step further with Operation Mockingbird. And that's a program in which the CIA infiltrated our media even further with moles and the recruitment of notable news reporters. As a matter of fact, you guys probably remember the quote from CIA Director William Colby, who said the CIA owns everyone of any significance in the major media. That's a pretty heady thing to say.
By the way, what happened to him?
Oh, yeah, the canoe accident. That's another coincidence, isn't it, guys?
With a hot meal on his table, Tim.
Yeah.
He had dinner with steam still coming off the food.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
he decided to go canoeing at the last minute. Right.
That's what I'd do.
And some of the guys that were part of Operation Mockingbird would shock you. You've got, some of the historical figures of all time for news and journalism. You got Walter Lippmann, you got Edward R. Murrow, you got Walter Cronkite, all of these guys. And a lot of them weren't doing it, to fall in bed with the CIA. The CIA has a couple of ways to recruit you. Either they give you money if you're unscrupulous and you'll say it to play or say it for pay. Or they play on your nationality. We really need you to help out the agency here, and we'll give you a little information. You help us out, because this is good for America. And so these people, they fall under this false patriotism, and they think they're doing a good thing. And unfortunately, they're not. But and if you doubt this, go back and look at the Church Committee, which blew the lid on all of Operation Mockingbird in 1975. I think they published their final report a year later. And what's interesting about that is that commission was stopped in its tracks by none other than Mr. William Colby, but also, you guys know the other guy? George H.W. Bush, when he became CIA director, 76 to 77. So very interesting. And another thing that was
talk about a family with a very, very vast history in all of
gosh,
this.
Could be a whole other show, Joe. I've got an article that I'm writing on that of four generations of treason for financial reason, which that's one due to come out on News Focus. I've been working on for, I'll bet you 2 years now. But
wow.
His grandfather founded the
Trust.
Yeah, he founded the USO so he wouldn't get, because it would be hard to prosecute him for trading with the enemy. Founder of the USO during a time of war.
He did a good thing for our servicemen.
Yeah, what a piece of crap.
Yeah.
But isn't that how they always work? They always weave in something like that to really, I mean, and to people who are paying attention, it's kind of like turning the knife. You're just, it's amazing that guy would stoop to that level to hide his tracks. You know what I mean? And you could tell it's totally for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Trading with the Enemy Act. And they actually took his money and, they supposedly took his money. I probably got it back. Anyway, as far as the church committee goes, there was one thing that's interesting that a lot of people don't know that was, I heard a lot rumors when I was in the media, and that was about ABC. And not specifically ABC so much, but Cap Cities. That Cap Cities was a CIA front organization, and then they eventually bought ABC, which stunned everybody in the industry at the time it happened. We all looked at each other and went, are you kidding me? Cap Cities? I mean, this is David buying Goliath. How does that happen? And that's something that got covered up also, So media control is a fact of life, folks. It's, again, not all journalists are bad people, but again, it operates in a hierarchy from the top down. And as Joe pointed out earlier, 6 corporations own everything we watch, everything we listen to. And all the publishing houses. There was a guy that said it best, was Winston Churchill. The victor writes the history. And that's the way it is, They own the publishing houses, so they write the history. They tell you their version of what happened, at least what they want you to believe.
May I interject some positive thought here?
Interject.
I'm not trying to be Pollyannish by no means, but I do think that with the internet, we have an overwhelming opportunity to go beyond that paradigm. I'm thinking that this broadcast is not bought by those 6 corporations. It's bought by Joe's wife, who oversees everything.
That's right.
That's
she certainly does.
There. Yeah, Mrs. Joe Joseph. So, folks, no, but the point is that, we have this opportunity, and on the downside, it's unfortunate because it's a vacuum and it sucks up all the junk, which really clutters everything and dilutes the good stuff. But again, we do have an opportunity so that, most people, they don't have to be spoon-fed things if they want. If they're able to, if they're not on too much Prozac, they can actually go on the internet while we still have it, while SOPA is not passed into law yet.
That series of tubes.
And find shows like this.
Yeah. And God help us if SOPA and PIPA, they pass. We don't need that. But, as far as the media, there's another thing that a lot of people don't know about, and I like to call it the research from the 2 Herberts. Have you guys ever read anything from Herbert Marshall McLuhan or Herbert Krugman? No. These are some fascinating studies, and Herbert Marshall McLuhan was the first guy to dig into this. He did studies in, I want to say, the 50s, and it was funded, I believe, by the Ford Foundation, a lot of these other nefarious foundations with money that, ferret that information away for their own good, But what he found out was the power of TV and the power it had on the subconscious of the human being, the human animal. And Herbert Krugman read about it, and he took his research a step further. And what he did was he used his secretary as a test subject, and he wired her up with all sorts of electrodes on her head, and then he'd turn the TV on. And the interesting thing that he found out was within 30 seconds of turning that television on, his secretary's brain waves had switched from beta waves to alpha waves. Now beta waves indicate an alert, conscious attention span. And alpha waves are the opposite. It's an unfocused, yet still receptive lack of attention. It's very similar to daydreaming. So it's a highly suggestive state. So 30 seconds from the moment you turn that TV on, your brain switches from beta waves to alpha waves. That's the power of the cathode ray tube, folks. And this is all documented. And you darn well know that the CIA and these people know this as well. They've used this medium to their benefit. So do a search for that sometime. Herbert Marshall McLuhan and Herbert Krugman. some fascinating research that'll tell you about the power of the TV and what it can actually do to you. And another thing that Krugman found out was that when you turn the TV on, endorphins are actually released in your brain, kind of like natural opiates. So it's technically possible to become addicted to TV. So if you haven't watched TV for a while, you kind of feel like you're jonesing a little bit. I think I really need to watch some TV. It's actually a physical mechanism that's kicking in your brain. You're missing these natural endorphins, these opiates that actually come out of your brain while you're watching. And don't take my word for it. Look it up. It's documented. So, I don't. You guys ever remember the Pokemon incident?
I love Pokemon.
No, I don't. What about Pokemon?
Back in 1997, there was an incident in Japan where hundreds of children suddenly had physically sickening reactions while watching the cartoon Pokemon.
Oh, I do remember hearing about that.
Episode number 38. Yeah. You had 685 kids, 310 of them were boys and 375 were girls, and they were all taken to the hospital by ambulance. They had loss of consciousness, convulsions, seizures, dizziness, headaches, nausea, blurred vision. Incredible from watching one episode of Pokemon. We're going to have to finish the rest of this on Tuesday night,
We're going to finish the rest of this on Tuesday night. We'll continue
listening to my radio show might do that.
Conspiracy in the media on Tuesday evening. So thank you, Popeye, Bob, Tim, and everybody else. Thank you for coming out and listening.